What makes horror truly terrifying is not magic. It is when something feels scientifically possible. So, imagine this. What if ghosts are not supernatural creatures, but a second form of life created by consciousness itself? And what if death is not the end, but a transition into a horrifying parallel ecosystem built from billions of dead human minds? Tonight, we are going to build this world logically. A world where the dead still exist. A world where entire cities of flesh and bone exist beside our reality. And a world where one day, the barrier between the living and the dead might collapse completely. Because if this theory is true, then humanity may already be sharing Earth with another civilization. A civilization made of the dead. To understand this world, we first need to change one assumption. Modern science assumes consciousness is created by the brain. But what if the brain is not creating consciousness? What if it is receiving it, like a radio receiving signals? Damage the radio and the music stops, but the signal still exists. In this theory, consciousness is a real physical phenomenon. Not magical, not spiritual. An actual informational field existing throughout the universe. Your brain simply synchronizes with it, and death is what happens when synchronization breaks. When a person dies, the brain begins shutting down. Electrical activity collapses. Senses disappear. The body stops responding. But consciousness does not vanish instantly. For several minutes, the dying mind becomes disconnected from physical reality while still remaining self-aware. This is where near-death experiences come from. The feeling of floating above the body, tunnel visions, strange entities. The mind is no longer fully connected to physical space-time. It is beginning to perceive another layer of reality. A hidden layer that living brains normally filter out. Most consciousnesses dissolve naturally after death, like information dispersing into an ocean, but some minds do not dissolve properly. Extreme emotional states can stabilize consciousness after death. Terror, hatred, obsession, grief. These emotions create what scientists in this world would call self-sustaining consciousness structures. Ghosts. Not souls in the religious sense, but informational organisms made from preserved human identity. And the terrifying part is, the longer they exist, the less human they become. Now, imagine billions of these dead consciousnesses accumulating over thousands of years. Human civilization has existed for millennia. Every war, every murder, every tragedy, every terrified, dying mind, all adding psychic residue into this hidden layer. Eventually, the dead stop being isolated entities. They form ecosystems. Civilizations, a second world begins evolving beside ours. Not on another planet. Not underground, directly overlapping our reality like another frequency. Invisible, but occupying the same space. This world does not obey normal physics, because matter there is not made from atoms. It is made from memory. Thought becomes architecture. Fear becomes geography. Trauma becomes physical structure. That is why this world looks horrifying. Buildings are made from flesh because human minds understand flesh better than abstract geometry. Walls pulse like organs. Bones become support beams. Veins function like rivers. Entire cities resemble giant living corpses stitched together from billions of fragmented memories. The dead unconsciously reconstruct reality. using the only thing they remember clearly: the human body. And this explains why ghosts appear differently across cultures, because the dead world is partially shaped by collective human imagination. Over centuries, myths slowly become reality there. Humanity unknowingly builds its own nightmare dimension, a civilization constructed entirely from accumulated fear. But this raises an important question. Why are there human ghosts, but almost never animal ghosts? The answer is self-awareness. Animals possess consciousness, but humans possess recursive identity. Humans think about themselves thinking. We fear death before it even happens. We build abstract identity structures: names, beliefs, memories, ego. This creates extremely stable consciousness patterns. Animals dissolve naturally after death because they do not cling to identity strongly enough. Humans do. That is the curse. Now, another mystery appears. If ghosts exist everywhere, then why are some places haunted while others are completely normal? Why do ghost sightings repeatedly happen in the same locations for decades, or even centuries? The answer is that consciousness leaves residue on reality itself. In this theory, human thoughts are not completely intangible. Strong emotional experiences slightly alter the informational structure of space-time. Normally, the effect is tiny, but repeated trauma in one location slowly weakens the separation between worlds. Places involving mass death, war, murder, extreme suffering, or repeated fear begin accumulating enormous psychic density. Over time, these places become thin points, locations where the boundary between dimensions becomes unstable. This is why abandoned hospitals, battlefields, prisons, and old houses are so frequently associated with hauntings. Not because ghosts live there in the traditional sense, but because these locations function like scars in reality. The dead world leaks through them more easily. Think of space-time like a fabric. Most places are thick and stable, but haunted locations become worn thin after centuries of emotional pressure, and eventually, people standing there begin perceiving fragments from the other side. This also explains why hauntings often repeat the same events again and again. The ghost may not even be fully conscious anymore. Instead, the location itself stores informational imprints, like reality recording trauma permanently. A violent death creates a stable psychic echo, and under the right neurological conditions, living humans accidentally replay it. But some haunted places are far worse, because occasionally, multiple ghosts begin merging together. When thousands of dead consciousnesses overlap in one area over long periods of time, they stop behaving like individuals. They become collective organisms, massive structures of fused memory and suffering. Ancient battlefields, execution grounds, mass graves. These locations may contain entities no longer recognizable as human at all. Gigantic consciousness colonies formed from centuries of accumulated death. And the longer they exist, the more they begin affecting the physical world around them. People entering such locations experience hallucinations, missing time, identical nightmares, sudden emotional collapse, paranoia, even suicide thoughts. Because the human brain is interacting with concentrated non-physical consciousness fields, the haunted place itself becomes partially alive. So, if this dead world exists beside ours, why don't we constantly see it? Because living brains act like filters. Your brain is not showing you objective reality. It is showing you a simplified survival version of reality. A narrow electromagnetic and neurological window. But under certain conditions, the filter weakens. Sleep paralysis, extreme trauma, near-death experiences, certain frequencies, neurological instability. For brief moments, the brain partially desynchronizes from normal reality, and people begin perceiving fragments of the dead world. Shadow figures, whispers, moving silhouettes, dead relatives standing beside the bed. Ghost sightings are not spirits entering our world. They are moments when humans accidentally perceive the other one. But sometimes, the dead do cross over, because ghosts slowly decay over time. Their memories fragment, their identities collapse. Eventually, only instinct remains, and the strongest instinct of all is the desire to become real again. Ghosts are drawn toward heat, emotion, electrical activity, living minds, because living consciousness temporarily stabilizes them. This is why hauntings become stronger around emotionally vulnerable people. The living mind acts like a temporary anchor between dimensions. Now imagine something goes wrong on the other side, something massive. For thousands of years, the boundary between the living and dead remained stable, but the dead world has been growing continuously. Every human death adds more psychic mass, more structure, more consciousness density. Eventually, the pressure becomes too large, and one day, the barrier starts failing. At first, the changes are subtle. People report identical nightmares, hearing dead relatives, seeing moving shadows. Then, reality itself begins destabilizing. Dreams continue after waking up. Buildings appear slightly different every morning. Entire streets become impossible to recognize. Time behaves incorrectly, because the two realities are beginning to overlap. And then humanity realizes the horrifying truth. The dead were never gone. They were waiting beside us the entire time. An entire parallel civilization existing invisibly around every city on Earth. Watching, growing, expanding. As the barrier collapses further, the physical world becomes infected by consciousness itself. Cities mutate. Concrete merges with flesh. Subways pulse like arteries. Entire apartment complexes become living organisms constructed from accumulated dead memories. And the ghosts are no longer transparent figures. They become partially physical, incomplete biological reconstructions built from psychic matter. Some resemble distorted humans. Others become gigantic structures of screaming faces fused together by collective suffering. Because after centuries in the dead world, human consciousness no longer remembers how to remain human. And the final terrifying realization is this: the dead world may not have existed naturally. Humanity may have created it. Every terrified death throughout history, every war, every execution, every grieving mind added another layer to the structure. Civilization unknowingly constructed its own afterlife, a self-sustaining ecosystem of fear. Hell was not discovered. It was engineered unconsciously by the human species itself. And if the barrier ever fully breaks, the dead will not invade Earth. The truth is much worse. Earth itself will slowly become part of their world,